Um, so hello, everyone. Welcome. We are recording this meeting for those who can't make this info session or the info session on December 2nd. So feel free to turn your cameras off and use the chat to ask questions if you don't want your voice or image to be recorded. And then, as I also noted in the chat, Elizabeth is our ASL interpreter today. So if you'd like to pin her video to make it larger, you can hover over her video and some dots should appear. And you can select pin for me. And there's also built-in Microsoft Teams closed captioning. And you can find those on the 3 dots at the top of your screen, and you can select turn on live captions. All right, so I'm just going to give some quick intros besides Elizabeth. I am Lizzie Mall. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for the Seattle Department of Transportation. We also have Jonathan and Michael, as well as Patrice in the room, who work for the City of Seattle. And they can help answer questions in the chat as we go. Aja is also doing some double duty of co-presenting with me today. And also, if you have any technical questions about using Microsoft Teams, she has also kindly offered to field those in the chat. So we will be presenting using these slides today, and I will send out the slides after the meeting as well. So hoping that you are all here to learn more about contracting with the city to work on either or both the comprehensive plan or the Seattle Transportation Plan. We have until 2 p.m. and we will do a high-level overview of both planning projects, talk about what we're looking for from your applications, and then have time to answer questions either verbally or in the chat. And if you could please put your name, the company or organization that you're representing, and if you're interested in working on either the comprehensive plan or the transportation plan in the chat, that would be great. And I will add that information myself. And that would be very helpful. Okay, I think that's it for housekeeping. So I'm gonna start moving through these slides. All right, so here is one reason why we are collectively planning. We're planning for growth. People want to live and work in Seattle. This slide shows a graph that shows how much Seattle has grown. The 2010 census reported that Seattle was a population of 608,000. The current population estimate is that there are 776,000 people who live in Seattle. And that's like adding all of the people who were counted in Seattle during the Gold Rush era in the past 10 years. And now we are planning for a Seattle population of 1 million people for the next comprehensive plan. So we have 2 opportunities to work with the city. You can apply to work with the Office of Planning and Community Development on the comprehensive plan, whose overall planning process will run from this coming January until 2024. or you can apply to work with the Seattle Department of Transportation on the transportation plan, whose process will run from January through March of 2023. Or you can apply to work on both. So how are these plans related? The comprehensive plan is the vision for the city and encompasses a lot of the policies that guide development and housing, parks and open spaces, transportation, and more, which Aja will talk about shortly. And the comprehensive plan will be an update to this overarching vision and policies for the city. We also have other guiding policies and plans like the Race and Social Justice Initiative, the Climate Action Plan, and the Complete Streets Ordinance, which are 3 examples of what is helping to guide the Seattle Transportation Plan. The Transportation Plan will be taking what we have today, which are 4 separate modal plans for bicycles, pedestrians, freight, and transit, and consolidating and updating those transportation networks, policies, and practices to create a new transportation plan. We have already laid the groundwork. Community engagement has informed each plan, so this work will be building on what we know from past comprehensive planning efforts as well as past modal planning efforts. I'm going to turn it over to Aja to talk more about the comp plan.
So hello, everyone. I'm just going to give a really brief kind of high-level overview of what the comprehensive plan is to give you a better idea of the type of engagement we'll need from you all as potential partners to inform how we're creating this update. The Seattle Comprehensive Plan is a policy tool that is created for and by Seattle's communities, and it helps guide investments in the city's housing and job growth over the next 20 years. So it's a 20-year horizon, but you can think of it starting to influence tangible effects in your communities, and we want to know how you envision those communities looking and feeling in the next 5, 10, up to 20 years. And it is an update to a comprehensive plan that we already have, which is called Seattle 2035, and that was completed in 2016. And it's required that we update it every 8 years. And then if I can get the next slide, please. This is an update, and we're considering it a major update for a number of reasons based on the timing of this update. Obviously, we're still in the middle of a global pandemic and starting to recover from that. And that's going to have definite implications both for the policies and also for the engagement that we're going to be seeing coming out of this plan. We're also coming into this update having undergone a national reckoning with systemic racism, both at the national level and also with unique implications for Seattle. And this is very significant in terms of how it's shaping our policy outlook and also how we're going to be doing engagement, and that we're really centering an equitable engagement ethos at the heart of what types of community outreach we'll be promoting and engaging with you all to undergo in communities, meaning that we're going to be concentrating our resources very heavily on attempting to identify and uplift voices of marginalized communities that don't typically aren't involved adequately in these type of large-scale planning processes that have direct implications for their neighborhoods. So that really is going to inform the work that we'll be doing on both of those levels. Climate change is going to be something that really factors in to this plan as well in terms of how we're talking about environmental justice, and that is going to be a very far-reaching. It will have its own sort of element and chapter in the plan, but it's also going to be something that's structuring a lot of the discussions we're having around transportation and growth policy. And so we're going to be looking at the ways that that has overlap and that there's interconnected implications and planning for that. It's going to be at the forefront. It is a growth plan, and so we have to take into account that we are undergoing a persistent housing crisis and grappling with past displacement and the ongoing risk of displacement to many of Seattle's communities. And so in thinking about accommodating this growth, we're thinking about where people are going to be living and working, and how to best do that in an equitable fashion. And I will just note that we, as Lizzie pointed out, we've undergone a really rapid period of growth in the city, and projections that we're going to be using and doing our analysis of how to structure that just point to the fact that that is a trend that's going to be continuing in the next 20 years. Next slide, please. This slide just touches on the fact that the comprehensive plan is comprehensive in that it is considering, it's a growth plan, but it also considers all of the things that growth will touch. So when we talk about how it has implications for housing, we're talking about accommodating at least 112,000 new housing units and almost 170,000 new jobs. And how do we get, move between those? How do we accommodate those new people and the current residents that we have? Transportation is going to be a big factor in that. And then also thinking more broadly about what the quality of life is for those communities. We have the category of livability up here, which is kind of an umbrella category that really speaks to those more quality of life implications of growth. And then, of course, as I said, environmental justice and climate change are going to be a major factor that touches all of those, as well as parks and open spaces. And so this just sort of gives you kind of an outline of the types of topics that we're going to be looking to gain input from the community, organized into categories like these. This is not a comprehensive slide of the comprehensive plan. It touches on more than just these, but we did just want to give you kind of a snapshot of some of the things that we're going to be talking about in this plan, and then distilling them down into really meaningful and relevant pieces of information that can go out to community and that people can in turn give us feedback. And that's really what we're looking to partner with small businesses and also with community-based organizations to help us accomplish. Next slide, Lizzie.
Thanks, Aja. So as you might have figured, the Seattle Transportation Plan focuses more on transportation than any of those other categories that Aja listed. So through the Transportation Plan, we will launch a planning effort for an equitable and resilient transportation system that considers all mobility needs. We will engage with communities to ensure that the plan reflects values, needs, and priorities. And at the end of it all, to identify an implementation strategy and to inform the next transportation funding package. So as part of this work, we need to be considering all mobility needs through this process so we can move people and goods safely, equitably, sustainably, and efficiently to create choices for people as part of a balanced multimodal system. We also know that we can influence climate change as part of our planning for transportation networks. From the transportation modes in that our streets support to the maintenance needs from climate change, this plan seeks to influence environmental sustainability. We will also keep building a transportation network that supports a racially equitable and socially just city. And all of this is to create a shared transportation vision that focuses on people and mobility needs so that our projects and policies can help us work towards a thriving, equitable community powered by dependable transportation. So this is really a call for you all to join us to imagine Seattle's future and be a part of that change. I'll turn it back over to Aja.
So with both of these projects, we're really going to be, as I said before, focusing on equitable community engagement. And we just wanted to break down a little bit when we talk about marginalized communities, what we mean. You'll see at the top there, these are groups where we are hoping to really gain a broad and deep sense from these communities of really what they want from these projects and how we can best create solutions and plan for the type of growth that we're going to be seeing both in the Seattle Transportation Plan and in the Comprehensive Plan. But we also want you all to know, as small businesses and community-based organizations, that you are just a part of the puzzle when it comes to what types of engagement both of our organizations are going to be doing, and that we're also talking internally to other city departments and with boards and commissions to get a sense of the projects that they're working on, and making sure that we're undergoing our plans in coordination with them and really capitalizing on the work that's already been done, so as not to duplicate, but really work with our partner offices within the city. We're also going to be using your information as part of a larger picture in terms of online interaction opportunities, both with our websites and also with virtual events. Given that we are in the middle of a pandemic, we've kind of seen how valuable virtual events can be in terms of lowering barriers to access for some populations and increasing participation in engagement events. So we really want to take advantage of that and offer that out to larger communities, even than you'll be interacting with. So really trying to make this engagement a citywide engagement, both at a neighborhood level, but also in citywide workshops and focus groups, different types of configurations of how we're talking to people at both of those levels. Next slide. And this gives just a little bit more form to kind of your engagement partners that you would be participating in if you choose to apply for either of these projects. As you can see, community-based organizations and small businesses at the middle there, that you're going to be doing on-the-ground engagement and giving us support and other engagement that we'll be doing within our offices, and ultimately coming up with strategic advice that will help directly inform and help us write those plans for the projects. And you'll be doing this like in parallel with a group of community liaisons who are individuals that we are contracting with through the Department of Neighborhoods, who are kind of the experts in their community. They're already within their community sort of respected leaders and go-to people for information, and they're going to help both facilitate the type of interactions in terms of outreach and engagement activities, and like you, be giving that information back in terms of what the community is thinking about, how they want to be getting around and how they want their city to look and feel in the future. And so in terms of deliverables, you will be producing very similar sets of information that's going to be tremendously valuable for both of these projects. And in a similar fashion, on the right, you'll see that the Transportation Equity Work Group and Equitable Development Initiative are also two groups that are going to be helping us to keep equity at the center and really increase accountability for the types of information and the plans that we're coming up with as offices within the city, to really keep us on track for upholding that goal of creating plans that are racially equitable and socially just. And so this just kind of gives an overview of the company that you'll be keeping, basically, in terms of engagement and how you fit into all of this.
Thanks, Aja. This slide shows a project timeline for the two planning processes. The Seattle Comprehensive Plan launches publicly early next year, and we'll go through a few phases of shaping the plan through 2022, and then reviewing and refining through 2023. The comprehensive plan, it will be adopted in 2024. The Seattle Transportation Plan has a shorter timeline, also with a public launch in 2022, with most of our time dedicated to information gathering and shaping the plan. And then we will have a draft plan by March of 2023. The contract for both efforts will run from early 2022 until early 2023. And one thing to point out is that there are going to be peaks and valleys for engagement for both processes. We really want to make sure that the work that we're doing together impacts the planning processes. So we're going to spend time together as we refine scopes of work. Both of our projects have the same funding levels. So there are two of them, engagement and information gathering. That's a $5,000 scope. And for that one, we're asking you to hold a few unique events, reach out to people in culturally appropriate ways, gather and share information to help inform the planning process. And then the larger contract is engagement partnerships and policy recommendations. And that is a contract for up to $30,000. And that is to partner with us to develop and implement an engagement plan and provide a report or paper that helps inform the plans. We will be able to work with each other once you've been selected to help build out your scope of work. And through the process, we're here to support you if you want us at events or want materials produced. Both the comprehensive plan and the transportation plan have a similar application and ask similar questions to be answered in a narrative of 5 pages or less. And Aja and I are going to go through these application questions in more detail. So first thing that we're looking for is that we really want to know more about you and your community connections. We're prioritizing engagement with communities that the city has historically marginalized, as Aja was talking about. Within that category of marginalized populations, we're specifically looking to partner with groups who are already serving or are part of Black, Indigenous, and or people of color communities. We are also looking for organizations who serve neighborhoods with a high displacement risk. So you can see on the right side of the slide that is a map of Seattle's 2035 growth and equity analysis. The link to the analysis can also be found in the application too, if you want to take a closer look. We also want to hear more about who with you on this project. And we want to provide space for you to tell us what sort of skills are among your group, and it'll help us through scoping and help us know how we can support you. And we also want to know how much money you'll need to achieve this scope of work. So we want to work with CBOs and small businesses, you all, to support the work that many of you are already doing for envisioning the future, and provide funding and an opportunity to determine how your input will be used in the planning processes. So the part with the largest, I guess, number of points is to tell us what sort of activities and strategies you would like to use to get input for the plan. So some examples could include focus groups, surveys, hosting events, doing something virtual, creating interactive art, or anything else that makes sense for how you show up in your communities. And importantly, we also want to make sure that those deliverables are something useful. So we can work with you a bit on what those would be and the timeline for delivery. the goal is that the deliverable will be tangible and meaningful and can be used by city staff to guide policy direction. And as I said before, we want to support you through engagement, so we can provide materials and city staff members can show up at events. So just let us know how we can best support you.
So in thinking about how we know if you're being effective at achieving your goals, and that's for you as well, tracking is really important in terms of clearly outlining how you're tracking and evaluating the effectiveness of your strategies. We'd really like to see that you can demonstrate a good sense of metrics, either qualitative or quantitative. And these metrics can include deliverables such as outreach logs, surveys, conversation documentation, and we're really welcoming creativity and thinking about this type of documentation. So that could be typed summaries, it could be video testimonials with direct quotations, obviously, in the videos, but just sort of something that gives us a tangible information set, data set that we can incorporate into what we're doing for each of the plans. And also this is tracking to show that it's laying the groundwork for communication with groups that's ongoing. In the slide that Lizzie showed that talks about the timeline, you'll notice that those peaks and valleys, which we'll work with you to closely define in terms of when those are, it's going to require sustained engagement. So we're really looking to incorporate sort of a feedback mechanism in terms of what outreach strategies are working, which ones aren't, throughout the process of the time that you work with us. So in terms of giving us feedback and incorporating that feedback into both your engagement and into the larger outreach that we're doing, that's also considered something that we consider in looking to how you're laying out your tracking. Next slide, please. So when we are in doing the selection process, we're also going to be looking to your vision and perspective, which is to say what makes your group unique in terms of your outlook on each or both of the plans. And I would say for the comprehensive plan, you would be thinking about kind of which element, if you're thinking of this 6 elements or more that are in the plan, your group may have a unique perspective on. Is it on housing, or with the transportation plan, would it be on sustainability? So those are all things that we're looking for your group to articulate. And then lastly, I'll say also we're also looking here for an articulation of how your group is able to bring a unique perspective in terms of mobilizing those marginalized voices that we are speaking about over the course of this presentation. What about your organization lends itself to having a unique ability to really get that on the ground perspective, both in a broad and deep way from communities, and allow us to have that insight into those groups. So all of those elements are important in articulating your vision and perspective. So in terms of next steps, applications are due by December 20th at 4 p.m. And the email addresses are up there. It's Michael Hubner, who's here in the meeting today, and Lizzie Mall, who's with us as a presenter. And as Lizzie spoke about, it's going to be the narrative that covers the questions that we just went over, that kind of go point by point, that walks you through it. And we can certainly answer questions about those if there's any finer points that we can put on it. The proposal cover sheet, and depending on if you are a community-based organization, a 501c3, letter of proof, or proof of legal business. Just those are kind of housekeeping items. And then after selection, we just wanted to be upfront about the fact that we do require groups as part of the City of Seattle's vaccination mandate to provide that attestation. And then for the larger contract amount, we do need a consultant questionnaire And all of these links are provided in the application. And we can put that in the chat maybe. Lizzie, we can get that during discussion. And then finally, as Lizzie was saying, for all groups, our offices will work with you to help define that scope of work. I realize that the engagement slide and thinking about that scope of work, it's a lot. And so we will be working with groups to further define that, to make sure that you know what it is that you're signing up for when you go out into community or launch your project. Whatever it is, we'll make sure that our offices will work closely with you to further define that scope, and that's part of the contract signing process. And I think that's it. And I guess we can open it up for questions now. Lizzie, is there anything else you wanted to add before we do that?
No, this works for me. We have about 25 minutes or so for questions. And I see a hand up from Adam. Go ahead.
I'm Adrian, actually, with Open Seattle, which is a brigade of Code for America. I just wanted to ask about, on the engagement slide, you mentioned online participation, and I wanted to understand a little more about how you see that being provided by the city as support for a CBO versus what kind of online tools you're looking for a CBO to bring to the engagement effort.
Comp plan folks, do you want to go first? I saw you on
Sure. I mean, I think that we're definitely looking for creativity in terms of what the deliverable looks like from CBOs. If you're working in a more tech-based community and part of your deliverable would be to create something to visualize or to gather information in a way that is unique that we perhaps haven't thought of or thought to offer as a city, that would be something that we could talk about in the scoping discussion, I think. In terms of the resources available, could you maybe be a little bit more specific with like what kind of resources you'd be interested in utilizing or what you'd need, I guess?
Well, I guess I'm wondering, like, is the city already planning some form of online participation?
Aja, can I chime in a little bit there? Also, I can introduce myself too. I'm Michael Hubner. I'm leading up the comprehensive plan work at the Office of Planning and Community Development. So we'll speak, and I want to hear from SDOT as well on this question. I think that the inclusion of sort of recognizing that there will be online engagement that can and undoubtedly will be part of the work of various contracts, just really recognizes where we're at in engagement generally, is that we know that we're going to be doing this work in a hybrid way where we can do in-person, face-to-face engagement, great, but there are going to be many instances that for public health and just the comfort of community members, or even just it's just the right tool for the right kind of input you want, that online tools are part of the toolbox. I think that we will be doing online engagement from the comprehensive plan citywide. So we'll have a website, there'll be places to point people to on our platform for them to provide comment. We will have one or more surveys. So there will be online ways that we're trying to, in the broader picture, trying to reach community. But you as a contractor and helping us out within a community could either be helping to bring people to our tools, or you may just use off-the-shelf tools that are available just generally to have community conversations or to exchange information with community members. So it really is just acknowledging that that's in our toolkit now, and it's more important given where we are with the pandemic.
Yeah, for the Seattle Transportation Plan, Jonathan's also on the line too, and he is one of the co-project managers. I think similarly to the comprehensive plan, we will have a website and a way for folks to interact with us through that website, online surveys, that sort of thing. I think at this point, we're also planning for a engagement toolkit. So folks can use that toolkit to do broader engagement if they want. And Jonathan, I see you have unmuted yourself too, so feel free to jump in.
Yeah, sure. I would just say that if you're with a coding group, and our team is a bunch of planners building website content, and so I would guess that you all could bring much more creativity to bear, and new and interesting ways to either visualize information or have people engage. And so we would have a website that you could, we could link into you somehow, or you could be present there. That will be there, but there seems like an opportunity where you all could bring your skills to do something really creative and interesting to expand our web presence. So I just put that out there, building on what others have said.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate that comment. It's, I guess, what I'm hoping to do, and I don't want to take up too much time on my question, but is it sounds like there are a lot of ways that we could plug into what you're doing, but it's historically, it's not like we can look back at the 2015 plan and see use that as a model for what you're going to be doing this time online. So there's going to be a lot of kind of feeling it out as we go along, what tools you're planning or building, and where we can either plug into those tools or even fill gaps that you don't have. So it's a pretty, it'll end up being a very kind of open-ended proposal, I guess is what I'm saying at this point. But we're going to do participating in the Democracy Lab hackathon tomorrow to try to get a finer point on where we might focus. Thanks.
Thanks, Adrian. Any other questions from folks? Okay, I see a question in the chat from Adam. How many partners will be selected? Will feedback / the scoring applied be provided on submissions? Yes, okay. So for the number of partners for the Seattle Transportation Plan, we are looking for between 4 to 10, depending on the number of submissions that we end up getting. And at what funding level. So if we have a lot of people who are interested in the lower funding level, then we may end up with more organizations. And if we have people who are interested in the higher funding level of up to 30,000, then we may have fewer organizations or businesses. And then for the comp plan, do you want to mention how many you are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, we have a smaller budget, and so we're going to be looking to 1 to 2 larger groups and more sort of like probably like 3 to 4, maybe 5 of the smaller. But that number can really fluctuate depending on the interests that we see from community in terms of who has the capacity to do what. I think that these are you can think just based on your own budgets about in terms of deliverables and about amount of time that you have. It's really going to vary about what you're able to take on as a group or as a small business. And so we created these 2 funding structures to really be able to be adaptable to meet your needs in terms of your capacity. And so I would say definitely use them as a guide, bearing in mind your capacity as an organization to take on the work, because they are meant to be flexible to reflect that. Michael, I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, just very, very briefly. So currently our budget, overall budget, is somewhere in the range of 70,000 for the comprehensive plan partnerships. We are seeking resources to scale that up within the time frame that we would be contracting for this. So we can just say what we have today, but a month from now, we hope to be able to scale that up. So the numbers that Aja gave you are at the lower end, and we hope to be able to bring more partners on board. Perhaps not quite at the level that SDOT is talking about, but getting more than we have now. So that's our aspiration, and we definitely want to encourage people to apply if they're interested, given that.
Yes, and to answer the second part of your question, Adam, we will provide feedback in the scoring. Other questions from folks? One question that we've gotten has been around like, what do we mean when we say community-based organizations? And by that, we're trying to work with local organizations. So, for example, not necessarily looking to partner with the entire American Red Cross or like a national group that doesn't have a specific local chapter. So that's what we mean by community organization. All right. I see a question. Yeah. The feedback that will be part of the application process, or does that happen after December 20th? Yeah, so for the timeline, basically you have until December 20th to come up with your application and send it to us. So we won't start doing the thorough read-throughs of all of your applications until December 20th. So basically, this also answers Matt's question a little bit too. We'll be doing selection and scoring in January, like through the end of December into January. So basically, yes, you will be chosen and notified after that December 20th submission deadline. Any other questions? One more question that I've also heard was around why not a 501c4? Why are we focused on 501c3s? And for the Seattle Transportation Plan, this work will potentially end in some sort of funding package, for example, voting on a levy. And so this really limits our ability to affiliate with 501c4s because of the political or lobbying elements that are associated with that organization type and allowed in that organization type. And I think the same goes for the comp plan. So we really need to make sure that the work is apolitical.
Lizzie, I'm just going to add to that and say we have gotten some questions from groups that are fiscally sponsored, meaning that they're not nonprofits themselves, but they have a fiscal sponsor that is. And we have at least, yes, actually I've talked to you, Lizzie, and we've both confirmed that that is okay. We just have to work with you to make sure that there's a place on the contract to have the signature of your 501c3 sponsor as well. But if you're not one and have a fiscal sponsor, then you qualify for this process.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, Liz, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, I was just going to add quickly, Michael, that it's an either or. So you also, you can also be a business organization. You don't have to be both a 501c3 and also a legal business. So one or the other.
So, Lizzie, actually, your comment was a nice pivot to the question, the more pointed one that I was going to pose to you, the two of you to talk to this group about, which is, can you say just a little bit about the vision or some ideas for what the role of an LLC might be, as opposed to the nonprofit, community-based or community-serving organizations? Understanding it's all one global body of work and it's all going the same way, but there may be some unique possibilities and opportunities for LLCs of various types.
Sure, I can speak to that. This aspect is actually one of the most exciting parts of this application process for me, because it really opens up the possibility for small businesses who are already kind of fixtures in their communities, be it like a coffee shop or a business that a community that we're trying to reach already frequents quite often. It's sort of a place that's neither your work nor your home. And so it's kind of a natural focal point for community conversations. And so we really see there being an opportunity for businesses that serve this capacity in this capacity already to be kind of natural gathering points for a conversation that's already going on about the city, and we'd really love to be able to partner with them to capture that conversation and be able to have it directly inform our plans. And it also kind of is a nexus of our work. I know I mentioned the community liaison cohorts that each of us, both SDOT and OPCD, are working with. They're going to be individuals going out into communities, and many of them have already identified sort of places like these kind of small businesses that they're going to be using in their outreach in addition to community-based organizations. And so there'll be lots of overlap between these two groups in the sense that you may be working in the same communities, and in partnering in a formal capacity, we're really looking to, again, leverage our resources to uplift these voices by, creating paid opportunities for the work that may be informally going on already in terms of this discourse, and using that to inform both of these plans.
Yeah, I second what Aja said. I think there's also a great opportunity to work together and collaboratively with the community liaisons as well. So if there are skills that you all are bringing to the table and there is a community that the community liaisons are working with, that it could be a really nice marriage as well. Any other questions from folks? All right. Can you share more info about where the CLs will be working? Oh, that's a great question. So for the community liaisons, we're both the comp plan and the Seattle transportation plan. We are in the early stages of getting this all kicked off. We're not publicly launching until next year. But the community liaisons that we're working with, we're doing that onboarding right now. And some of the community liaisons represent neighborhoods, some represent different communities. Like we have liaisons who represent who are like community leaders in with folks who have or are experiencing homelessness, or who are part of like the different marginalized communities that Aja mentioned earlier. So they either like represent different communities or are part of different communities, or are geographically based. So basically the work that we are going to be doing with them will be also kind of like shaping their work plan as well. moving forward.
And also, I think that since we're doing these processes in parallel, I think if you look at a map of Seattle and we have community liaisons that are working with populations that span multiple neighborhoods that might be citywide, and then we have some that are kind of in more enclave areas. And then we look at you all and see, the groups that we have that are community-based organizations or small business. We're really looking to see where there's overlap and where there are gaps in terms of those populations that we're really seeking to uplift and highlight in terms of this outreach. And so the reason why Lizzie had that map of, helping us to figure out what your community is that you serve and where you'll be doing outreach. I think that we're trying to get as much broad and deep coverage as possible. And so if you think about that map of where we're doing outreach, we want to get the most complete picture possible. So that's also in terms of where the CLs are working and where you all will be working. I think that both of those processes are going to be working in tandem. It's just something I wanted to point out in terms of the outreach areas.
Trina, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to that. So if we wanted to propose a project that has some tie-in with the community liaisons, but we don't know exactly, which communities they're going to be working in, or whether they're communities of interest or geography or culture, how should we go about weaving that into our proposal? Should we just kind of leave it somewhat vague as to where it is, but describe what our vision of that partnership would be, or how would you like us to do that if we go down that route?
What I am going to do, Aja, if you want to answer that question, that would be great, but I'm also going to put a link in the chat to the Community Liaison Program, and you can take a look at the folks who currently serve as community liaisons.
Well, Lizzie, if I could chime in, that list isn't necessarily, is that a list of who is serving as community liaisons on these projects, or all of the community liaisons?
Yeah, it's a list of many of the community liaisons who are engaged right now, but as far as the selection of folks who are working on this project, I think that we have a narrower scope of the folks that we're working with. So I think that's something to keep in mind. So if there's someone who is representing the Russian community, but we aren't going to end up working with them, then what is that? You don't want to necessarily have your whole scope be around that one community liaison.
I will say, though, since we are prioritizing the same groups in both the community liaison and community-based organizations in terms of those marginalized communities. So if you're looking to serve one of the communities that are listed in terms of who we're prioritizing in the scoring process, there's a good chance that we'll also be working with community liaisons that are serving that area as well.
Any other questions? We have 2 minutes left. You can also, if you think of other questions as they come up, you can reach out to us by email. That would be great. And happy to answer any future questions. I will also put the link in the chat one more time to the blog post that has the applications for both the comprehensive plan as well as the transportation plan, and also includes some frequently asked questions on that page as well. All right, well, thank you all for being here, and I really appreciate your interest in these projects. It'll be really exciting. I'm going to stop presenting. Thanks all. Thank you for your time. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth.